Good morning, Beans.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
We're doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good.
There's Nancy. Hi, Nancy. And Sue.
Morning.
Looks like they have the guards at the back door.
Dan says it looks like you have guards at the back door.
We do. Yeah,
Glasses or what?
we have guards back there trying to keep people out.
Oh, yeah.
Be careful here, we're recording.
Well, I'm trying to, anyhow.
Says it's on.
The recording's on, but the speakers aren't coming on.
Oh.
Right ones, anyhow.
Morning, Chip.
Morning, Chip.
Good morning. Good morning. Everybody's okay?
Doing fine. Thank you.
Yes.
Okie dokie.
Nancy, are your flowers blooming? You have lots of flowers. Peonies are blooming. The tulips are gone. You can hear Lynn.
Now, there's the problem. Let's try this again.
Morning, Dave.
Hey, now it's working.
Morning.
Morning.
I was not praying in front of the computer. I was trying to get the sound working again.
Sounds good.
It does.
Where is it raining this weekend? Iowa, Indianapolis, anywhere up in that part of the world?
No rain here. We're ready for a little break from rain.
May snow here.
Yeah.
They had snow in Montana and Idaho and parts out there last week.
Well, we went golfing yesterday. It felt like it was going to snow. Man, I had long underwear on. I came out to go and I had on my winter coat and knit hat. Nancy told me I couldn't go like that, so.
Is that acceptable golf course wear?
No, I was just gonna wear it to tease my son-in-law who was running the golf tournament. So
Where
it was
was
our 21st family golf outing.
Wow.
So 21 years in a row. So what's Florida like, Dave?
Well, it's been so dry this year. We just haven't had any rain to speak of at all. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a total here where we are of 3 inches since the 1st of January.
Wow.
But, we're supposed to get some, a week and a half ago or so, I guess we got 1.5 inches or something. And then it's supposed to start our rainy season in earnest later on this afternoon and evening. So, but this morning it's bright and sunny and 75 going to 85, they say. Steve, did you get your crops all in? Hello?
Yes, he does, Dave.
I think he's still connecting.
They finished on Friday, Dave.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Now they have lots of hay to make.
That's also probably good.
Yep. How many acres did you do, Steve?
Oh, I think there's about 26 or 2,700 between corn and beans.
Unfortunately, there was another mass shooting this morning
Oh, no.
Where?
in Dade County, Florida.
Hmm.
Do you have any information, David?
No, probably no more than you do. They say 2 were killed and as many maybe as 25 or so hospitalized. And they don't know, let's say a white SUV drove up in this area and 3 people got out and started shooting. Seemed to be random. I would guess that it's going to turn out to be either gang related or something of that nature. It's about, I think it was around, what was it? Was it 1:30 this morning, I think, maybe?
Hmm.
I'm not sure when it was.
Morning, Lauren.
Good morning. I have a question. How is Valley Mills doing attendance wise? Are they doing Zoom, and are they going to be included in any of this discussion in June about the future of West Newton?
Valley Mills.
I can say that they are meeting at the meeting house and have been for quite a while. They're looking for a pastor, and so in the meantime, they're asking lots of guests to come. Della spoke last week. I spoke 2 months ago or so. Their attendance was maybe, you were with me, were there 15 people there?
Yes, I'd say so.
Mhm. I don't know that they've been invited to be part of our conversation yet.
Norma has some information on Valley Mills. Come up here where you can get
Yeah,
the
Norma
speaker.
goes every Sunday.
Yes, for the keys, yes. They run between 12 and 17 or 18 on a regular Sunday, usually, sometimes 9, but usually 12 to 17 people are there. And they are working on Zoom. There's a couple that is trying to set up, and they're experimenting on Sunday mornings with making it work. As far as there being a part of the conversation, I don't think so.
Yeah, not at this point. We need to have the conversation ourselves first to decide, just to begin the conversation, and certainly it may expand to say, to invite others in to it, but at first, it's just our congregation going to have the discussion.
Well, that's actually what I meant. I was at the discussion of West Newton. Is there going to be any discussion of possible future discussions with other meetings?
We'll see what arises, Lauren. We don't know. I mean, that's part of it, I think, is to see what friends would like to do as we think about a future. One of the things about that meeting is it's not unusual in the sense that we've been doing those about every 5 years anyhow.
That's right. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, so we may, we'll just begin the discussion and then see where friends feel led and where to progress from as the discussion moves forward.
What's the status of Fairfield?
They're not meeting. I think they may be doing something by Zoom, but I don't even know that.
They do USFW by Zoom, so I would think they might do meeting for worship via Zoom, but I don't know.
I know they're still not meeting in person.
You know, we just went by there was nothing there. So.
Yeah. And Plainfield meets in person and they stream their worship service, but that means that the people who are watching it on streaming just watch it. There's no participation in that
it's
way.
Not exactly the best system, since I went on, was in the building the other night, so it's. But they did stream something.
Staying in Nancy and
Out of the city yesterday.
Kirsty.
Well, Christy's making her way up the walk, so when she gets here, we'll have the prelude. And we'll wait till she's here. And for friends who are here, if you feel led to speak, we need you to come up front so the microphone can pick you up, because otherwise it doesn't very well from. It's a directional microphone to get the piano. The other microphone didn't work so well. It was omnidirectional.
Appreciate all the work you do for that, Brent.
I'd say it's fun.
But I think they read about the before that we got because I want to use do next.
Checked out. Young man was trying, find a few needs. Like, actually, no. I was this.
Thank you, Norma. Welcome, everyone. We have almost a full house in the meeting house this morning compared to what we have had. We're happy that Sue and Scott have joined us today as well. Are there joys or concerns to share at this time? If there are, please unmute yourself and do that. And if you're here, again, please come up and speak so the microphone can pick you up.
For those of you who know John Mohanji, who is our Field, who is our Director of African Ministries in Kisumu. Many of you have heard that his son was killed in a motorcycle accident day before yesterday. A lot of people have been sending greetings to him through Facebook, and it's just amazing how much support he's receiving from all of us. You know, we've experienced that many times, the sudden deaths of young people, and it's tragic.
How's Ruth doing, Loring?
She's doing okay. I can barely hear you, Brent. Or
Really?
I don't know exactly why.
Okay, how about now? Is that better?
It's a little better. It's a little better.
Could you hear the
She's
music?
Ruth is a remarkable person, and she's about 94 and a half now. Start counting by half years when you get to be 94, I guess. And Beth is quite diligent about seeing her and talking to her every day. And Ruth is always looking for people to talk to and encourage over there at Westside Garden where she lives.
Well, the joy I had, as I mentioned, was I did go golfing with the family yesterday, my one time a year, basically. Our 21st year, there were 7 foursomes. It started out just Michael and a couple of his kids and me and his uncle and a couple cousins, and now it's son-in-laws and grandson-in-laws, and the family keeps expanding. Ashton brought a number of his high school buddies, and they, being young and not able to feel the cold, all wore shorts and Hawaiian shirts. They were quite the spectacle. I was a spectacle too, but for another reason. But it was fun to be with family and have a good time, and actually sink the longest putt of the day of any of the teams. So. Well, thank you all for joining. Let's invite you to put yourself on mute if you could during this part, and unmute when you feel led to speak. Sylvia is our worship leader this morning. Let's hold these concerns and joys and other concerns that we have in God's light and love as we enter to a period of silence, and Sylvia will speak out of the silence as she feels led.
Well, good morning, friends, on this holiday weekend. I look around the group and I see that most of us remember when this was called Decoration Day. It was officially named Memorial Day, well, not officially named yet until about 1971, but it originated just after the Civil War when a general thought we should honor the veterans of that war. But the practice of honoring those who have fallen in battle dates back thousands of years. though, and the ancient Greeks and Romans held annual days for remembering their loved ones by putting flowers on their graves and having feasts in their honor. Some of us may take flowers to the graves of our loved ones to honor their lives, whether they were in the military or not. Many of us gather with friends and family for feasts during the holiday weekend, and some see it as the official beginning of summer. Those of us from the Indianapolis area may associate Memorial Day with the famous 500-mile car race. I personally have experienced the thrill of standing on the steps of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument singing patriotic songs with the Capital City Chorus on Memorial Day. And today I wish to honor all those, and especially those we know, who have given up some pleasures in life to work toward making the world a more peaceful place. Though I respect the ones who have followed their conscience into the military, I also wish to honor those who have worked for peace outside the military and believe that they are deserve our honor as well. We're likely familiar with several scriptural references to the importance of peacemaking. Even in the Old Testament, with its stories of violence and thousands of deaths that supposedly God directed, much of it relates to the Israelites getting to the promised land, and we find prophecies that the Messiah will come and teach peace. These words are from Isaiah and repeated again in Micah. In the last days, all the nations will stream, and I'm inserting, to the Lord's temple. And many people will say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways so that we may walk in his paths. The law will go out from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He will judge between the nations and will settle disputes for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. Come, O house of Jacob, let us walk in the light of the Lord." Maybe we're not so familiar with these verses from Isaiah, but I think they also refer to peace. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people. Jesus said in his Sermon on the Mountain, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." He also said, "You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, have him take your cloak as well. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I tell you to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." George Fox in 1660 made the following declaration to King Charles, and this is in our Faith and Practice in Western Yearly Meeting. "We utterly deny all outward wars and strife and fighting with outward weapons for any end or under any pretense whatever. And we certainly know and testify to the whole world that the Spirit of Christ, which leads us into all truth, will never move us to fight and to war against any man with outward weapons, neither for the kingdom of Christ nor for the kingdoms of this world." These words come from Faith and Practice of London Yearly Meeting. This is number 620. And they were issued by that yearly meeting in 1915 during the First World War. Meeting at a time when the nations of Europe are engaged in a war of unparalleled magnitude, we have been led to recall the basis of the peace testimony of our religious society. It is not enough to be satisfied with a barren negative witness, a mere proclamation of resistance to war. We must search for a positive, vital, constructive message. Such a message of supreme love, we find in the life and death of our Lord Jesus Christ. We find it in the doctrine of the indwelling Christ, that rediscovery of the early friends, leading as it does to a recognition of the brotherhood of all people. Of this doctrine, our testimony as to war and peace is a necessary outcome. And if we understand the doctrine right and follow in its wide implications, we shall find that it calls to the peaceable spirit and the rule of love in all the broad and manifold relations of life. Thus, while love, joy, peace, gentleness, and holiness are the teaching of our Lord, it is to these we are impelled by the indwelling of the divine in all people. As this spirit grows within us, we shall realize increasingly what it is to live in the virtue of that life and power which takes away the occasion of all wars. I want to share with you 3 brief stories. These are true stories about Quakers who have taken action to take away the occasion of wars. This story is also from London Yearly Meeting, Faith and Practice, number 622. During the American War of Independence, the Quaker whaling community on the island of Nantucket was heavily criticized from both sides for their neutrality. One of their leaders, William Roach, had a warehouse of bayonets which he had taken off of muskets, which he had accepted as a payment for debt to him, and then sold them for hunting rifles. In 1776, the bayonets were demanded from him by the Americans. Believing that the bayonets were instruments made for the destruction of mankind, he was unwilling to turn them over to soldiers for that purpose. William said, though he would rather have beaten them into pruning hooks, I assume that would take time he didn't have. Instead of doing that, he threw them into the sea. Afterwards, he was called before a committee appointed by the court, and this is what he wrote about his own experience. He said, I gave them a full account of my proceedings and closed it with saying, I sunk them in the bottom of the sea. I did it from principle, and I've ever been glad that I had done it, and if I am wrong, I am to be pitied. The chairman of the committee, a worthy character, then addressed the committee and said, I believe Mr. Roach has given us a candid account, and every man has a right to act consistently with his religious principles. But I am sorry that we cannot have the bayonets, for we want them very much. The major was desirous of knowing more of our principles, on which I informed him as far as he inquired. One of the committees, in a very pert manner, observed, then your principles are passive obedience and non-resistance. I replied, no, my friend, our principles are active obedience and passive suffering. Today, I honor William Roach, who acted on his principles to prevent destruction of human beings. This story is more contemporary and about someone I had met briefly at Baltimore Yearly Meeting back in about 2006. On November 26, no, I don't think I met him in 2006. I met him some other visit. On November 26, 2005, in Baghdad, masked gunmen stopped a car carrying 4 members of the Christian peacemaker teams and abducted them. And I will call them the CPTs, the Christian peacemaker teams. The 4 CPTs had planned to visit the Muslim Clerics Association An influential group of Sunni religious leaders formed in 2003 after the collapse of the former regime. They were about 100 meters from the entrance to the mosque where the meeting was to take place when they were abducted. One of the hostages was Tom Fox, age 54, of Clearbrook, Virginia, a leader of the youth programs at Langley Hill Friends Meeting and of Baltimore Yearly Meeting. The hostages were members of Christian peacemaker teams which began working in 2002 before the 2003 invasion of Iraq. So the Christian peacemaker teams were already there. Their goal was and still is to document and publicize abuses of human rights occurring in whatever country they are visiting, especially in relation to those people who have been detained, and to advocate for peaceful solutions to conflict. One example of what CPT volunteers do in Ramallah is to escort Palestinian children to school in places where they are harassed by Israeli soldiers. A distinctive feature of this crisis in Iraq was the victims' dedication to nonviolence. The CPT organization condemned the actions of the kidnappers, but maintained pacifist principles by refusing to call for any violent rescue effort. The kidnappings led to widespread sympathy and support, with calls for release coming from diverse groups, the Muslims, the Christians, and secular groups in the West and Middle East. However, supporters of the Iraq War have criticized the team's presence in Iraq and said they had no business being there. Throughout the crisis, CPT continued to campaign for Iraqi human rights, attempting to link support for their own workers to the support for thousands of Iraqis who are being detained illegally now. The kidnappers claimed that the hostages were spies. They threatened to kill all 4 hostages unless the U.S. freed all Iraqi prisoners held in the U.S. and Iraq immediately by December 8th, gave them about 1 week. They later extended this deadline to the 10th by 2 days, and after the deadline passed, it was a month before the next word from the kidnappers came. Then on a month later, 2006, a video was broadcast showing the 4 hostages were alive, and the captors stated that the US and Britain had one last chance to free all Iraqi prisoners or the hostages would be killed. Then nothing was heard from the kidnappers until about 6 weeks later, when they found the body of Tom Fox, my friend from Baltimore, on top of a garbage dump in Baghdad. He was killed by gunshot wounds to the head and the chest. The hands of the corpse were bound together, and some news stations reported that Iraqi policemen claimed Fox's body showed signs of torture. And this is another point I'm trying to make. It wasn't just Tom Fox who was trying to be a peacemaker and do the right thing, but the other people of his team, honestly and candidly, saw that there was no evidence of torture upon viewing the body in a stateside funeral home, nor was there any sign of that when his body was recovered. And a member of the CPT group added publicly that he believed claims of torture further demonized the other side. The results of an independent autopsy have not been made public, but the CPT people were asking for it not to be made a bigger deal than it was. Upon Fox's death, the CPT released a statement of condolences, also asking that the world not vilify or demonize others, no matter what they have done. They quoted Tom Fox himself, saying, "We reject violence to punish anyone. We forgive those who consider us their enemies." Today, I honor Tom Fox and others who risked their lives to work for peace. And the third story is about someone you may be acquainted with. You maybe have heard of Getri Eziga. a bold young Quaker woman in Kenya who stepped forward with remarkable leadership during the post-election violence in 2008. She not only showed up to help quickly organize the Friends Church peace teams, but became a significant leader to the groups who went to the villages that had been burned to lead in a reconciliation process. She continues to be a leader and trains others for peacemaking. I want to tell this portion of her story. One day, not long after the violence that killed hundreds and displaced over 100,000 people from their homes in Kenya, 2008, Ghetri happened to be riding on a matatu, that's a large passenger van. In the seat in front of her were a couple of young men who angrily were talking about their plans to retaliate against the councilman of their district because they blamed him for causing the violence in their village. She thought she heard them making plans to burn down his house. So when the matatu stopped and they got off, and the young men got up to get off, Ghetri got up from her seat and followed them out the bus. And as they walked along and noticed Ghetri following them behind, they stopped to ask her where she was going. She told them she was going to see the said councilman that they had talked about. Do you know him? They asked. He is my friend, she said, without ever having met him. Would you like for me to introduce you to him? Well, the young men said yes to that, so she asked them to lead the way since she wasn't sure how to find his house. And when they got there, the councilman was home, and Ghetri introduced the young men and facilitated a conversation between them that brought about understanding and a plan for peace in that village instead of the violence they had planned ahead of time. So today I honor Ghetri Aziga and others like her who are proactive in building relationships that bring about peace. And I invite you to remember and honor peacemakers today. And don't forget to thank God for them and their service to humankind.
As we come to our transition time between semi-programmed and unprogrammed meeting, thank you, Sylvia, for your message, and Norma. Are there things that friends would like to share before we make the transition for those who need to leave?
Thank you, Sylvia. It was a wonderful message.
Well, friends that need to leave, feel free to do so, and the rest of us will continue on in unprogrammed worship.
Okay, so, well, okay, okay. Yeah. And your speakers. Now, why do we have, why the sound is just coming from those little speakers?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you.
Memorial Day weekend is always a time when my family thinks about my dad. He passed away on May 31st, 1974. And so we remember him on this weekend. And Sylvia's comments have brought him to mind also. Even as young as he was at the time of World War II, his physical situation was bad enough that he was given a physical deferment from the military. I'm sure would have signed up as a CO anyway, but his back was enough of a problem that he didn't even have that opportunity. So he spent some time in Norway after the war, helping to rebuild the devastation of that country. And I'd love to ask you more questions now, like how long were you there and what was it like and that sort of thing. But of course, I was young enough when he passed away that I wasn't interested in that kind of thing. So I didn't ask those questions. But listening to Sylvia this morning made me think of the words of one of his favorite hymns, and it's often not in hymn books, and I don't know whether it is in ours, but I looked the words up online, and I'd like to read them and share them today because I think they go along with what Sylvia was talking about earlier. The title of the hymn is "That Cause Can Neither Be Lost Nor Stayed," and these are the words. That cause can neither be lost nor stayed, which takes the course of what God has made, and is not trusting in walls and towers, but slowly growing from seeds to flowers. Each noble service that has been wrought was first conceived as a fruitful thought. Each worthy cause with a future glorious, by quietly growing, becomes victorious. There by itself, like a tree it shows, that high it reaches, as deep it grows. And when the storms are its branches shaking, it deeper root in the soil is taking. Be then no more by a storm dismayed, for by it the full-grown seeds are laid. And though the tree by its might it shatters, what then if thousands of seeds it scatters?
when Sylvia talked about Decoration Day, I remember as a Cub Scout and then as a young Boy Scout going to Green Lawn Cemetery in Columbus, Ohio, and through the veterans section putting little flags out on the graves of the veterans. We probably had more fun than we should have. We weren't probably quite as reverent as we could have been. And then later, when I was in high school, I worked for a florist. And on Decoration Day, which is beginning to be called Memorial Day, we often took various wreaths and things around to that have been paid by families to place on certain soldiers' graves. That time I was starting to become a little bit more troubled by military service as a possibility. The Vietnam War was raging, and I was looking at the Quaker peace testimony a little bit more seriously. But finally, when I was in my late 30s, I was asked one year to do in Newcastle, Indiana, to say the prayer at the Memorial Day service at the cemetery, and I did. And that was the last time I felt I could do that. I've had trouble ever since about what's the balance between honoring those who felt called to serve and the peace testimony. I mourn their loss. It's a terrible loss. And I think of all the countries that mourn the loss of all these young men across the world for ages, for governments who sent these people into battle. The old song, where have all the flowers gone, when will we ever learn, always comes to mind. When will we cease to learn the way of war and learn the way of peace? And when will we give as much honor to those who work for peace as those who go to war? So I thank Sylvia today for her message. May look at some of those like Tom Fox and others and say, well, their witness was futile, but was it any more futile than those who lie cold and still in their graves? I don't think it does. And that, in fact, that they were a great witness, and may we always honor them. Well, as we come to the time to close, are there any thoughts that friends would like to share before we say goodbye?
Good to see everybody, and everyone stay safe.
Have a good Monday.
Take care, everyone. Blessings.